It's 9:32, so I'll go ahead and get started. So thanks everybody for coming to our first, oh, there's John. So I'll wait just 1 second.
And Tom, are we, oh, good. Never mind, you're recording.
Yes, I've got the recording going now. Good morning, John.
Hey.
Hi, John.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started. So this is the first sprint review for this work cycle. So for those of you that haven't been working with this project and unfamiliar with how we're working, so we're working in 4 sprint work cycles, and a sprint is 2 weeks. So that work cycle is 2 months or 8 weeks long. And so, Surfliner project wide, everybody works for 8 weeks on this, and then everybody goes back to their own campuses and works for 8 weeks on campus stuff, and then we reconvene again. So it's an on off type of thing. And so within each work cycle, we have 4 sprints, and each sprint is 2 weeks. And at the end of every 2-week period, we have a review that goes over what we've been doing. And so we wanted to update everybody on what we're doing. And also, for those that aren't familiar with it, we use the Agile project management philosophy, which means that everything is constantly in flux. And we're always changing methodologies and kind of like going with the punches as things come up. So this is a sprint review for the Shoreline product, which is our geospatial interface. And so we have our Geo Blacklight instance and stack up and running, and we're calling our Geo Blacklight instance Geodata. And so it was a significant effort to get that up and running and being able to ingest materials. And then there was a continuing effort to stabilize the infrastructure, for lack of a better term. The software uses CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous delivery, which is an automation in building, testing, and deploying applications. So that's been the difficult part of all of this, is getting that automation to work continuously. And
I'm sorry, Tom, can you say that part again?
Yeah, and maybe Alex could explain it better, but it's basically all the back end functionality that is used to, build the software, to test it, and to deploy it and keep it running. So Alex, could you maybe explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so like the continuous integration part usually refers to automated testing, and so we have written tests for the Shoreline, and so whenever we open a new merge request to either add a feature, fix a bug, it'll automatically run those tests, let us know if they failed, and it'll also put up a test version of the site so that we can actually navigate it and do some manual quality assurance. And so once we are satisfied that the changes don't break anything and we merge them, then the continuous deployment means that it automatically applies those new changes to our staging server. And so without us having to do a manual deployment of the code. And then once we're satisfied, again, that everything's good, we can do a manual deployment to production. Some versions of continuous deployment actually automatically deploy to production all the time, but we're being a little more cautious about that. So that last step is still something we do manually.
Yeah, and so a lot of the work around developing all of that was geared for this work cycle. But because so much of it is involving other Surfliner products, the team decided to move all that DevOps work, the work around CI/CD, into its own stream, if you will. So there's a whole line of DevOps work being done that's not being done within the Shoreline purview. And so it's not under, as the product owner, I don't have jurisdiction over any of that. And so, you know, the things we're covering in this sprint review don't include that because they're doing that separately. And they also decided that because so much of it is back-end work, that there really isn't anything to show, rather than doing a sprint review after every 2-week sprint, they were going to wait till the very end of the work cycle and do one big demo of all the work that they've been doing related to all the DevOps CI/CD stuff.
Yeah, it's that's the part that I missed, was the offloading of that work to outside this process. Thanks, Tom, for going over that again, and thanks for the detail, Alex. I had never I've never heard such a good explanation of continuous deployment before, or the way that our variation is holding back from production. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, and I think it's key because it's not like we're standing up what is it called, a static, a static system that would maybe be easier but not as robust and expandable and all of that. So yeah, it has its own issues, but it's for the better. So the other aspect of the work cycle from the Shoreline perspective is that we now need to start gathering information about what features that are desired, and talk to our stakeholders. That's basically you, John, and Christy, and Abby, as librarians are working with the system as well. We've got the out of the box thing up, and so now it's where do we go forward? How do we improve this? And so a lot of what we're doing is asking those questions around further development, and as these work cycles come up, if it's just a 2-month period, we can't do everything. So we need to prioritize what we're going to be focusing on in each work cycle. And then as we're getting into things, it's always hard to tell how long it's going to take or how difficult it's going to be. And sometimes, we don't get as far as we thought we were going to, because, things come up that we have to deal with, or, hopefully at times we can get through more. And so just to go over some of the accomplishments for this sprint, and I can also put up, so you can see, we work on what's called a Kanban board. I don't know if you all are familiar with this. It's basically, I have it set right now to only show the tickets that are within the current sprint. So, open tickets are waiting to be worked on. The ready ones are actually ready to have work starting on them. In progress are the ones that are being worked on at the moment. For those that are related to development, they then go into the deploy column. If the work has been done but they haven't been pushed out yet, and then closed. Now this time, because there wasn't any dev work, a lot of these tickets are related to setting up meetings, having discussions, and things like that. And so one of the things that we've done is we've started conversations at UCSB and UC San Diego regarding where to store the original data sets that are being ingested into GeoData. So what we have right now, and actually I can show you, this is the UCSB instance with the UCSB branding. This is the UCSD instance with that branding. And we'll be doing, further branding to actually have it say GeoData, but this is just the basics. So at this point, if you go in to a data set, the only thing you can do at this point is download a derivative. So the ingest process ingest a zip file that has the shapefile in it into GeoServer, and then GeoBlacklight works with that in GeoServer. It actually has to reproject on the fly, so it creates a derivative. And so, what's sitting in GeoServer, we can't really then, download what's in GeoServer and, make that available to the user. It needs to actually sit in some sort of, file directory, a repository somewhere, in order for that functionality to work, where we can download the original. And so right now, if you click export here, you're just exporting the derivative. And if there are any ancillary files with the data, there's no way of bringing that out. And so the conversation that we're starting is, so where are we going to be able to store that data in a permanent, hopefully preserved location, a dams or someplace? Do we need to stick it someplace temporarily before we can get into a dams? Those kinds of conversations, because we ultimately need to have it someplace where we can access the original and have that downloaded. So we started those conversations. We've also set up stakeholder meetings at each campus. So John and Christy, that's the meeting that we set up with you, and also Greg, Janae, and Renata, to talk over what your thoughts are on what features should be developed, and we'll go into the details more of where we are and talk about where we could go in that. So we've set up those meetings at both Santa Barbara and San Diego.
And then those are going to be separate. We're not going to meet jointly.
Yeah, because I think it would be too many people and be
Sure.
So we figured we'd just break it into smaller groups.
Yeah, and is the guest list finalized, Tom?
Well, I mean, it's open. I mean, if you feel that there are other people that should be there, I'm happy to.
It just occurred to me that, I wonder if we should talk about that a little bit, but different venue.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I wasn't sure exactly. Is Torin? Are they someone who should be there or not? Or if there are other people that you think should be there.
Yeah. Top of my head, no. I was thinking, would this be an opportunity to bring in a first end user or a savvy campus partner, who can give a non-library perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Thomas Cramell.
Oh yeah.
Well, I don't want to always go back to the same well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, one of our thinking around this was we wanted to kind of do internal conversations first.
Yeah.
Especially because one of the things we want to do is ingest more data so that it's more, so you can actually see what it does. And like right now, the UC San Diego production doesn't have any data in it.
Okay.
And so we wanted to have these, because we're going to have these continuous conversations. This isn't going to be the only conversation we're having with you. So we wanted to start with you. And so yes, I think maybe not in this meeting would we include other people, but that would be, something we can talk about is going forward when we have more data in here, and we want to, start getting their input as well. Who should we be speaking to?
Yeah. But great, good.
Yeah. So this is the beginning of continuous conversation. We'd like to definitely have a good conversation before every work cycle, so that we're planning out the work accordingly. So definitely the next work cycle would be, let's see, this is June, July. So October, November would be the next work cycle. And so, and that's something we could even do off cycle. That doesn't have to happen in June and July, that we could have those meetings between now and October so that we're ready in October for a development cycle. Yes, any other questions about the stakeholder meetings? Okay, another aspect of this is that the ingest process is something that Alex has designed something we've put together, just kind of like, let's get stuff in so we can see it. Originally, when we had DCE, the consultants, developed the first version of this, they used, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, I think it's called GeoCombine, which is something that the GeoBlacklight community developed as an ingest tool. However, over time, the institutions have stopped supporting GeoCombine, and every institution kind of went their own way. And I think it's because they couldn't come up with one solution that worked for everybody. And so we were working on this thing that wasn't supported, and that made it difficult. And so we decided to develop our own from scratch, but it was a very basic, let's just get stuff in. And so now we're having conversations, and one of the things we're doing in this work cycle is to have conversations with other institutions about their ingest, because the community as a whole, I think, is also saying, and we hear this at Geo for LibCamp at Stanford, it's like, why can't we have something in common, or at least in the areas where there is some overlap, that we could create some sort of tool, because it's difficult for every institution to develop this from scratch. And so we talked with Berkeley, and they've developed their system. We talked with University of Colorado Boulder. They developed a really cool web interface for doing this. We're going to be talking to Cornell University, and in the past we've worked with Princeton, and so we're having conversations about the ingest to see, if there's a way we can build a tool that, primarily it allows us, the librarians, to ingest materials without having to have a developer push the button. It's like I should be able to ingest materials, create metadata, update metadata, all of that. And so,
yeah, and that's especially important, everyone, because Alexandra's and the other developers' time should be spent developing, not ingesting data into a repository.
Exactly.
And I guess apologies from the library side, Alex, that we knew all along that we shouldn't be doing it this way.
Yeah, it's yeah, and there's also another Surfliner product being developed called Comet, which is still being defined, and I'm still not sure where the boundaries are, but it's primarily a digital asset management system. To what extent it includes the storage, to what extent it includes ingest, I don't know. I think we're all eagerly awaiting the conversations about designing that.
Yeah, I guess, and maybe Alexandra could share a little bit more. But what Christy said, I think maybe as recently as last week, was just think about Comet as a word that doesn't actually have any sort of a project or product associated with it yet. It's this totally blue sky plan.
Yeah, right now Comet is just the perfect dams we'll have in the future.
But so even that's a little bit more specific, which is awesome.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how all of our conversations around this ingest is going to overlap with Comet or what, but we'll be continuing to have these conversations. And then another thing we're doing is developing metadata creation documentation. And we already have the documentation here at Santa Barbara, how we've been doing it. But the idea here is working with San Diego, coming up with commonalities, trying to find ways to speed up the process, especially around authorities, subject authorities, place names, things like that. And so the two campuses are working together to develop documentation around creating that, because ultimately we want to be able to share our metadata, and we also want to share it with the larger GeoBlacklight community and get their metadata. And so we're also working with the GeoBlacklight community, so that we're all on the same page, so that when our metadata is in all of these systems, it's read properly, the right things are in the right fields, or using similar terms, so that we don't have 5 different versions of, boundaries with a capital B, boundaries with a lower b, boundary,
Yeah.
singular, plural, that type of stuff. We want to make sure that we're as consistent as possible.
So on that note, would it be appropriate for one of these sprint updates, or would it be appropriate to have a standalone meeting where both campuses share what their current practices are? And because I actually have no idea how y'all work down in San Diego.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be in the framework of this meeting, but we can definitely. I mean, we can even bring that up in the stakeholder meeting that we're having.
Sure. Or maybe that would be a nice topic for a CKG meeting, because and you also said Berkeley's interested, right?
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, and UCLA is has some interest. So yeah, that actually would be probably a good place to talk about it, because it's directly related to all of us collecting county data and creating metadata.
Yeah.
So yeah, that actually be the perfect place for it. So I think they already put a call out for agenda items. I can put that on there. Okay, I'm just looking at the time, making sure we can.
You have 2 minutes.
Yes, I mean that's pretty much it. The only other thing I wanted to say is that there is a blog. I don't know if you're all familiar with it. It's https surfliner.ucsd.edu, and this is a blog where we post at the end of every sprint. Like this meeting is being recorded, it'll be put up here on the post along with a blurb, and any sort of information about what's going on in the project is put here. So this is always a good place to check for information as well. Anybody else want to comment on anything that's been happening during this sprint? Amy, Abby, or Alex?
I think you've done a good job, Tom.
Thank you. Any comments anybody wants to bring up or questions at this point? Okay, great. Well, thank you all very much.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for including us.
Sure. We'll be doing this at the end of every sprint, so every 2 weeks during a work cycle, and we'll definitely keep you in touch as we're going on with the other meetings as well. So let me just stop sharing and stop recording.